I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. And, I really do want to emphasize this point of the manner in which President Biden, the Democratic caucus, and even going back to the CARES Act, as you pointed out, in a bipartisan manner, have worked so hard to create so many jobs. And we are so proud of it because in New Mexico, we have some of the lowest unemployment in history, and that's the case across the country. But the other really important piece of it is not just have we created jobs, but have we stood with workers? Because it's also the quality of those jobs and whether the workers are going to be able to receive the benefits, the overtime, and those things that are key so that they can also prosper. Because there is a difference about when you stand with the wealthy or when you stand with the corporations versus are you standing with the workers? And in many ways, it sounds to me like when you're looking at the independent contractor issue, it is about who are you going to stand with, the workers or the corporations? In a situation where a worker, a single worker, is trying to make sure that their rights are protected, who has the power in that situation? Acting Secretary Sue.
Thank you very much for that question, Congresswoman. So I view my role as the Acting Secretary of Labor and the Department of Labor's role to make sure that we are enforcing the labor laws that have been written and given to us to enforce. And that means that we have to, that we investigate cases, that we try to make sure that workers feel safe reporting violations to us so that we can learn about those violations, and where we find them, we will enforce the law, including issuing citations and penalties to employers where appropriate.
Right. So in some senses, the Department of Labor is there to sort of as backstop because individual workers who might be stiffed for their overtime, who might be placed in an independent contractor position, they need somebody to be on their side. And in that sense, the Department of Labor should be on their side. There's been a lot of questions around AB 5. So Acting Secretary Sue, yes or no, does the proposed rule try to implement California's ABC test as enacted in AB 5?
It does not, Congresswoman. It explicitly says that we cannot, we will not, that's not the law of the land.
Right, because we're seeking to have you be Secretary of the United States Department of Labor. From what I understand, though, the proposed rule was so reasonable that hardly anyone had much criticism about it, even groups that voiced concerns in the past. Acting Secretary Sue, yes or no, is it true that the Department of Labor has already stated that it does not have the authority under the FLSA to implement the ABC test absent an act of Congress?
That is true, Congresswoman, yes.
And yes or no, do you believe in separation of powers and that the Department of Labor does not pass laws and instead only implements rules that are consistent with the laws Congress passed?
Yes, Congresswoman, I have stated that here, and yes, I believe in separation of powers.
And, we've heard all of this fear-mongering about what you do and how you voted around AB 5. What we are talking about here is the United States Department of Labor. But you did, you did live in California. Acting Secretary Sue, did you serve in the California state legislature?
I did not, Congresswoman.
And who actually passed AB 5 in California?
It was the California legislature.
And where were you when the state law was passed?
I was the Secretary of Labor in California.
As Secretary of Labor, what was your job and your requirement to do once the legislature passed that law?
So thank you very much, Congresswoman. So I oversaw agencies, including those that were charged with enforcing laws that were passed by the legislature. So our job, both as Labor Secretary in California and the agencies that I oversaw, was to enforce the law.
So what we should be asking you now, and which I think you have already said, is similarly to the manner in which you honored your obligation and oath to the Constitution in California to carry out the laws, are you committed to carry out the laws and honor an obligation and oath to the Constitution to carry out the United States laws regarding labor?
100% yes.
thank you so very much for your dedication and your service. Service is really an act of love because it requires so much, and you have taken a lot and been so gracious and diplomatic in answering the questions today. I thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you.